You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the Meta. The Meta controls everything. The Meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
We're live.
We are.
Welcome back, everyone, and we appear to have a ProGod legend with us. That's fantastic.
Well,
I don't know if ProGod is actually here
muted.
or if he is just muted and AFK. Okay, so here's what we're doing here today, guys. We've got a couple of guests, at least one from Tesla. Thank you to Incubus. Thank you to Canonicus. 33 months, 22 months, respectively. Shout-outs all the way around. So, yeah, we skipped last week because people in the Imperium were doing something Secret Squirrel and NDA that we can't talk about in public. And it was cool, and everybody can get some FOMO about it.
Yeah.
But we're back, and we have 2 weeks of Internet Spaceship news to go over. And we have ProGod Legend, and hopefully later Villy. Villy is sort of a partial on this. We think we're getting Villy, but
Villy's like, I'll be there if ProGod's not. And then ProGod at the last moment, it's like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna go kill this P Horde fleet. We outnumber them. Lol, bye. Be right back. And so like they're both a possibility. It's been an interesting week because I've been trying to get guests for the last 3 days, and pretty much everyone I've talked to has either said I've got bronchitis, I've got pneumonia, or I've got no voice. So death flu. Fucking death flu.
I just have to point out here that Sadis just dinged the 48-month subscriber.
Oh, wow. Holy shit.
I think that might be one of the first 48 months that I have seen. That is really awesome. Also, Dragon000, Ronnie Hugo, thank you guys very much for throwing money at the screen. We appreciate that. And, of course,
Always.
It wouldn't be a Sadis sub unless there was a reference to WoW being the first MMO. Ralos for 33. Hell yeah. It's been a curious couple of weeks in EVE. Like, there has been a fair amount of action in the Geminate territory. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to have guys from Test on to talk about the conflicts that have been happening up north. There have been a few big headlining explosions, several of them today. 2 worth mentioning. If I don't mention them now, somebody else will.
Oh, yeah, we will.
Which is both us losing a bunch of excavators like idiots randomly to a bombing run, which is kind of hilarious. That was like a 60 billion excavator loss earlier in Delve. I just think that's kind of, and we blew up a Rataru earlier today that was affiliated with Ranger Regiment in HiSec. I believe it was in HiSec, but anyway, it dropped 100. It was 196 billion kill mail for a Rataru. So. Yeah, things are kind of exploding everywhere.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The excavator thing was funny because it was over a span of like 30 minutes. On one moon, 68 of them vanished. But they vanished to like a bomb. Like, it'd be one thing if these really expensive 900 million-ish drones died to like a fleet shooting them over time and there was a big battle going on. No, they just died to a bomb. So, it was pretty funny. And then, this Rataru, apparently, some guys in Minilove noticed a whole shitload of haulers, like, taking stuff to this Rataru constantly over and over and over again. They war-decked them, the Alliance war-decked them, and then it died.
No, I haven't seen this before. Paxim, now, guys, again, help us out here in chat. We think we're going to be able to cover all of the major news the last 2 weeks, but you never know. A lot has happened, so there's a comment here about Test losing 60 dreads and build in low-sec. It's versus our Iceburn. Wow, 50 months. Forget 48 months.
The 60 dreads and build in low-sec. So that's Trope de Elites, and we are going to get to that when Test gets here. But those 3, Rataru, and Azabel belong to Trope de Elite. They just joined Test recently. We're actually going to talk about that. I guess that's a great segue moment since we have that question.
Might as well. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So, real quick segue is that in the last month, I would say, there's been some interesting movement in the North. We've been, since the start of the new year, we had that show where we said, look, we think PL may not survive the new year. Well, it's actually looking more and more NC Dot is as having a more movement than PL in the last 30 days. And so when we look at that, Pandemic Legion had the biggest eye-opening announcement, and that is Bat Country has left Pandemic Legion under the careful guise and leadership of Kismetir, of all people, and has joined Pandemic Horde.
Now, when you see something like this, they only have like 5 to 7 active pilots, and I think what really happened here, I don't know for sure because we don't actually bother with spying in Bad Country because they've got 5 to 7 active pilots. But I think they probably got kicked out. Like, logically speaking, you don't go from Pandemic Legion to Pandemic Horde. They also did a CEO transfer, whoever was in charge before Kismetir. Kismetir was sort of the last man standing, it appears, and then went to Horde. So Occam's Razor, they got booted for inactivity, but perhaps they're acting like they left on their own. We'll see.
He did like a little Q&A. I read like a second or two line of it. Apparently, Mittens is bad at broadcasting and set the wrong link, so thank you, Aerith, for directing people to the right show. But what's funny about this is, like, the whole premise of Horde, we've talked about this on the show for years, is to go from Horde to maybe Vanguard and then maybe PL, right? Like, move your way up in the chain. To take an entire corporation from PL and throw it into Horde has to, like, fuck with that whole mentality of go and join Horde to eventually become elite and join PL, right? Like,
I just think that it's an interesting comment on the trajectory of people who make a big splash by betraying Goodstorm and making a lot of loud noises about how they're totally going to be the real goons. I mean, Bad Country exists as a schismatic organization because of a lot of stupid bullshit that involved Indy, and a lot of Gargoons types flipped sides and joined them, and then that's what they got. Yeah. It was either $10 Bond or Bad Country, and such is the fate of traitors. So good luck with that.
Yeah, and hey,
we have Billy here.
Billy, yeah. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, there was a lady at the grocery store. We had to chat. So.
That's more than fine. And then real quick, since we're talking about the corporation thing, before we'll jump into the test thing here and go whole ham on this.
Well, no, you guys are talking about Bad Country. That's exciting stuff, man.
You're in charge of Bad Country, dude. Like, what the fuck?
This is something you might be interested in, Billy, because you tend to like mocking our enemies as much as I do. Is that NC Dot has had a big shakeup in terms of major corporations that belong in and are owned by NC Dot. Groups that have been with NC Dot for years are leaving. And they're leaving in dramatic ways because they're all going to join Test. Just recently, to give you the names of the big ones, a Syndicate Enterprise, or Cydna, had over 400 members at one point. They left and joined Test. A small group splintered off and stayed with NC Dot. The Maverick Navy, which has been, of course, an old corp that's been around EVE for a long time, has joined Snuffed Out. Her left. That's another 200 people left NC Dot. They went and joined Test Alliance. And then you had a group called SEAL Team 6, who, known as Dot Club, which is a great name, has left with 600 people from NC Dot and went and joined a group called The Reckoning. And then the biggest one just happened a couple days ago. Actually, I think it just happened today. Is Havoc has quit NC Dot. That's another 200. So they've lost big name groups and corps. Yeah, SEAL Team is their Alpha Corp. Yeah, but it's a huge chunk. But what they've gained is even more interesting because while they've lost 5 corps, they've gained 5. And the 5 they've gained are a brand new corp, was a splinter off one of the ones that went to Test, 3X CO2 corps, and one they gobbled up from Darkness. So it wasn't like they replaced these big corporations with A-list material here. It's a train wreck, and I love it.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on with that. I'm not sure whether there was a intentional purge or whether people are just mad at Vince or what exactly is going on. I can't. Oddly enough, I don't really have a theory off the top of my head. Villy, have you heard anything about this? I know that you guys have been sort of going toe-to-toe with Horde and NC Dot off and on. What's your take on the changes up there?
Well, I think you have a changing of the guard. You've got an entity which at one point was the most elite, most powerful, most biggest, most best alliance in the game, and now they're not. And all the, coat hangers, or what is that? What's the term we call them? Coat hangers?
Hanger-ons.
Hanger-ons that,
Yeah.
Joined.
We use coat hangers for different things.
All those people that, joined PLNNC just to be the elite of the elite, no longer are getting what they paid for. Now they're just, regular Alliance number 3, and that's not really ideal to a lot of these groups. They want to be the big ballers. So when you get a situation where you go from being the big baller to not being the big baller, it's a pretty big letdown, I would imagine. A lot of these people sacrifice their identity, they sacrifice their friends, the whole thing, right? And now they're just Alliance number 4, or Corp number 4, and some shitty Alliance number 3, right?
Well,
like,
I think
what's the big thing about being in PL nowadays? Like, does that mean you're good anymore? Nobody thinks so. So it's like, what's the reward?
It is kind of weird to see as much churn in NC instead of PL, but PL, from a certain perspective, already had their decline a while ago.
Yeah.
Maybe what we're seeing now is it's a new year, and everybody who is kind of like looking for the exits from NC Dot after the incidents in UALX and X40, and that other one where they dropped the Keepstar, it had a TAC, and the name was that HTAC 5. Yeah. All of these losses, loss after loss after loss, now people are finally going, you know what, this is not a place where I want to have my time. I'm going to be kind of curious to see what happens there. The PL thing, them losing Bad Country isn't really a big deal. That actually is probably better for their kill mills because it's basically a dead corporation. But yeah, I am a little surprised to see Maverick Navy leaving NC Dot for Snuff. That certainly raises. I was surprised in the first place that Maverick Navy had found a home in NC Dot, but I don't really have anything.
Yeah, I mean, this has been over the last month. We just haven't really talked about it because it's not like something that would pop out. It wasn't until this recent war with Test where you started noticing, like, hey, Test got a new corporation of 200 guys. Oh, hey, Test got another corporation of 200 guys. Where'd they come from? Oh, it's all NC Dot. Wait, what the heck?
Well, let's get now that we actually have Villy here.
Yeah.
Let's get can you give us, so last week we didn't have a meta show, so we haven't done the show in a period of 2 weeks. So if, Villy, you could give us an overview of what has Test been up to in the last several weeks, what has been happening in the, there was, of course, a big Dread feed that took place in Jiminy. We were also a part of that. Oops. Can you just give us a broad overview of what you guys have been up to recently?
Well, we deployed up north to go fuck with Horde. Like, you can arguably say it started as far back as October when we took all of their high-sec markets, their Chilean month. But, we've been up there. We deployed November at the earliest, I guess. We turned it into what we call kind of a death clone deployment, which is, tell people to put their death clones up. We're taking it up to that next level kind of thing. And for the most part, it was going fine. We had a pair of big Dread Wolves, which really sucked the momentum out of kind of the campaign, which is what they tend to do. So we've just been kind of slowing down the pace, trying to get a good sense of what we need to do to find holes at the moment. We're actually in the process of just trying to, kind of set the stage, I guess you could say.
So what sort of level of resistance have you been seeing? Has it been primarily from Horde themselves? Has NC Dot sort of like taken up the mantle to defend Horde? Who are you facing off against on the chessboard?
Horde and CPL. Like, the three of them are pretty well intermingled. Black Legion was a player for quite a while, but now with kind of an interesting change, Black Legion has chosen to reset the entirety of the North, and now they did more damage to them last week than we did. So, I mean, obviously, Elo Knight is not a girl to be scorned lightly. So,
yeah, we have some comments from Elo about that. We're gonna share later. We have some words.
Well, let's go ahead and do that now.
Oh, do it now. Okay.
Schedule. Yeah, I mean,
So
Black Legion reset a bunch of people
last
and
Friday.
Things are.
Yeah, right before the meta show was due to come on, last Friday, Elo announces, look, get all your shit out of the North. Get it all to this one Citadel in MO, this Keepstar. It belongs to PL. Get it there. Evacuate Pandemic Horde space. Evacuate NC Dot space. You need to get your shit out now. You have till Friday. And that was 2 weeks ago. Then Friday comes along and they go, oh, by the way, we're resetting literally everybody. And then we're going to move into FDZ. And that was announced this week. Now, they reset everybody but PL until about an hour ago. Then PL got reset. So now they have officially reset everybody. I tried to get Elo on here, but he's sick, along with everybody else in the world. And his announcement is that they're not as big as they used to be. They can't really influence the game as well as they could before. I guess Branch campaign with Horde took a toll on them or something. And they've said, look, we're just resetting everybody, and we're going to try our own thing. But I can tell you, the reset everybody is real. Yesterday, they came over to shoot us. We were in Kavala with a little fleet of 300 mans. They came over to try and shoot us and had a little standoff. And then they tackled a bunch of dreads when we stopped looking at each other. And then they're like, hey, can you come help us kill these NC Dot dreads? And we did. And that was pretty cool. And they've been fucking with Horde. They started shooting Horde structures just recently. They reinforced a bunch of Horde jump bridges and said, okay, Horde, come fight us. I dare you. So it's been really interesting.
So, do we know what, and Billy, if you've been watching Black Legion shooting Horde, do you have any idea what went into this? Why are they gunning for Horde in particular? Did Horde scorn them or is Horde just easy targets? Or what's Test's perspective about what's happened with Black Legion?
I don't know what exactly precipitated it. I know that Elo was perhaps a little annoyed with some of the Northern leadership at times for different reasons, but nothing that, like, to me was, the straw that broke the camel's back in a moment. I know that, like, he's built his alliance as, an elite PvP organization that's based around content. They're not, a Oracle mining alliance. They're not about security or any of those things. They're literally about, let's go farm people and have fun. And they blew up every alliance around them except for GOTG and, the Russians and Branch, which did not leave them a ton of reasonable targets, since GOTG is primarily Australian time zone. So they're literally surrounded by a sea of blues or people outside their time zone. So they either had a choice where they had to attempt to deploy, which, they tried a SAW, I think it was, and somewhere in Delve. I don't know where they had these little mini deployments, is my understanding. And they, they got a few mini fights or whatever, but you can't do a ton. So they were kind of in a position where they had to find something to do. And you have this alliance right next door to you called Pandemic Horde and Pandemic Legion and Northern Coalition Dot, and half of those alliances have been your traditional enemies. And Pandemic Legion and Black Legion, before Headliner, I guess, maybe that he's the big friend connection, were, to say the least,
very hostile.
Yeah, they were, Pandemic Legion, hated Black Legion and vice versa. But now they seem to be pretty good friends. So I don't know how it's all truly worked out. I can speculate, that they just needed content. They needed something to do, something to shoot. But it's impossible to say what the breaking point was.
Plus, I think it is notable that one of the last, Black Legion did briefly come to Delve. Nothing came from it. But before that, they were, in theory, the leaders that Gobbins had hired for Horde to campaign in Branch, and that went absolutely nowhere for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons why Black Legion turning on Horde seems like they're turning on Horde rather than just using them for content is that Horde was the most recent client that had hired, presumably, Black Legion to do some work for them. So now they're biting a hand that had fed them. And so that's a little bit more significant than just farming Horde for easy kills.
Well,
maybe that's where the high-sec money was supposed to go, but who knows?
Well, that's an interesting point too. Is one of our conversation topics here as we go on the show will be about Horde in general and the state of Horde and the Cabal Expanse and Geminate. And one of the important bits here is if it was just for good content and good fights, they wouldn't be shooting jump bridges and Astra houses and really making Horde's life miserable. Because as we know, and this is a point I want to
Wait,
bring up.
I didn't realize this. Is Black Legion actually shooting structure?
They shot
they killed a couple
jump
jump bridges yesterday.
So that's particularly unusual. That implies that this is more of a grudge kind of thing, because Black Legion historically has been absolutely allergic to shooting a structure under any circumstances, even under their mercenary contracts.
Right.
They don't like to shoot structures. So if you see Horde shooting a structure, excuse me, not Horde. If you see Black Legion shooting a Horde structure, that is outside of the context of the normal content farming.
Here's where I think this is reason this is happening. I've been in Cabal now, for months with the NGSA, and one of the things we noticed with Black Legion just in the last couple of days is they, thanks Darth Kill for 27 months. Whew, goes fast, you're right. Is that it seems like Black Legion forms at a set time, because they're a US Time Zone Alliance. They look around at who's content in the area. So yesterday it was my fleet, and then the day before it was a Horde fleet. And then when nobody gives them anything to do, they look for the nearest structure to go poke at, see if that brings them content. And if they blow it up, they blow it up. If they reinforce it, they reinforce it. And that seems to be like their thing right now in the last week. So, but the interesting thing about this is Elo himself had a character in Horde, and I can't remember the character name. Been searching for it for a week now. And I can't remember it, where he was FCing them from that Horde character pretty much the last couple months. And
Horbind or something, right?
Right, I can't find it. I've been looking for it. And if that'll be a clear sign if the mood has changed, is if that character's still in there, right? Is this all about good fights, or is this a serious, like, hey, fuck you guys? Because if that character's not in there, then you'll know that, hey, we've pulled out completely.
Alright. That fight's not gonna happen.
Hi, Pro God! Did you win?
We won by not fighting, if that counts.
Well, look, this is structure saved.
You got them to stand down? Is that the objective?
No, we're just going to stare at each other from the safety of our tether range.
It's funny because Goblins has been hyping that shit for the last hour.
I know. I just heard about it 20 minutes ago. They got more Feroxes than we have people.
So just before you popped on here, ProGod, we were gossiping about Black Legion turning on Horde. Do you have any inside information or amusing speculation as to what made Elo shoot structures for one?
I'm not exactly sure. From what I can tell, that they, Black Legion started out trying to get content from GOTG, and they brought on Horde to help them with numbers there. And then when we started hitting on Horde pulled back to their space and, adopted a more Sov War stance, which Black Legion, I don't think they're necessarily in the mood for a Sov War. With the blue balling and the, Hell Dunks or blue balls type style. So maybe they felt left out in the dark there. I know Black Legion wasn't involved in the Big Dread fight the other day, which might have also contributed a little bit to it. I'm not sure, though.
Yeah,
it just seems it's so unusual. Like, I knew we were going to be talking about the Black Legion reset, but I am unironically surprised, and I just found out that they were actually shooting Horde jump bridge.
Right.
I've hired Elo and Black Legion to work for the Imperium on a number of occasions going back to 2013, and they don't shoot structures by and large.
And
so
here's
it's like,
the
whoa,
interesting
something
thing.
happened.
It's not like structures in general. It's not like he's shooting Geminate. He's shooting jump bridges on the border of Geminate and Kavala, which makes traveling in Kavala for Horde a fucking nightmare. And I guess that's a great segue point, because I want to ask what Tess is up to with this. But if you look at Kavala, and I'm going to link you a fancy picture to go along with this, 35 of the 60-plus iHubs have died in the last 2 weeks. Horde, for as much as they talk about how they're big and bad, they aren't defending an entire region of their own space. And that entire region is literally a gate and a Titan bridge or a jump bridge away. All the jump bridges, of course, are dead. But here's a link. All the X's signify dead iHubs that have either been killed or replaced. Another link shows the ADMs. The ADMs are all down to 1. Horde's having to do, you might like this, Mittens, they're having to do ratting fleets to keep the ADMs up, like 100-man ratting fleets that run around VNIs.
I've seen those.
Yes. And then there was a recent battle where you guys were involved, and you guys came over to Kavala, and you spanked Horde, and they went home. Kind of sad. From your guys' perspective and Tess, what's going on in Kavala? Is it just like a side project that's fun, or what's going on there?
Kavala was never really our focus. I mean, we weren't necessarily as worried about nipping at the edges and spreading them out, because we had at one point thought about staging Impala, which is actually closer to Kavala and still has a similar jump range as to where we're at. But Kavala was never something we really considered. That was more your SIGs, NGSA and Liberty Squad coming over, and us obviously having the big Super Cap umbrella on top of us now, looking to spread the content out a little more.
Okay. It's just interesting because like that's their only income left outside of like what's going on in Geminate. It's they lost HiSec, and then you had their renters, and it just seems like why would you abandon all those iHubs that the renters have to make money if you were interested in surviving as an alliance long term? It seems like they're very short-sighted here with let's focus on fighting Test and Geminate and having all these good fights, and maybe we'll get to Kavala later.
I think it's they're very limited from what I can tell over the past 3 months by the FCs that they have available. NC Dot and PamFam have good FCs, but they've only just recently come back to the game and playing pretty heavily. Vince has only just come back recently, Killabee's only just come back recently, and Nidaspar has only just started playing more heavily recently. And it definitely affects what they can do.
The fact, and this, maybe he's gotten really good or something, but just to sort of show the level of what the hell you went from talking about, Vince and Killabe, and then in the same sentence, Nidaspar as being one of their top guys. He was the guy who started FC, was the lead FC in the HTAC 5 Keepstar nonsense before Killabe came in. And it's a confusing mix of like Vince and a bunch of like backbenchers and like D team people that have barely seen the light of day except for major.
You're gonna like this.
Well, those are good FCs, but it was definitely noticeable for us, and this is part of how we got stuck in the shitty situation we were earlier this month. Is that we've gotten used to not having their full FC team against us.
So suddenly the quality stepped up, and that's why you guys ran into that. And us too. Yes. We ran into that brick wall too during that dread bomb.
I was doing things with carriers in December that me and my FC team kept asking, like, how are we getting away with this? But as long as we are, we're going to keep doing it. It was like the Thursday after we had announced that we were going to step our campaign up. It was a fight in Oizhinen, and we had fought in Oizhinen about almost 10 times now by that point. And every single time we fought in Oizhinen, we had used carriers outside of their Titan range with SS fighters to help get air superiority. And I kept asking myself, like, the first time they tried to kill the Oizhinen Fortizars, they dropped like 300 kilometers away with their Titans, similar to what they did in UALX. Actually, exactly what they did in UALX. And I kept asking myself, I don't know why they just don't come on zero. It's not like there's anything we could do about it. But, if they're going to keep giving us that, we'll keep using it. So it was like the Thursday after we announced our campaign, we put our carriers on our Fortizar in tether range, same setup we always did. And this time they dropped right on top of our Fortizar, and we ended up losing a bunch of dreaded carriers. And I was like, all right, I guess they've discovered they can do that. Now we're in a shitty situation. So like we started the campaign, based on the tactics and strategy we expected them to use, and then they stepped up their willingness to use their Super Cap force right on our face, which is what they should have been doing the whole time. But
yeah, I mean that would be
well played on their part.
That would be like their only advantage, right? Is their Titans and Supers, and it was very shocking to see. Oh, hey, I'm gonna drop my Dread into this fight, and I'm probably gonna get out, and then like, not even 2 weeks later, it was like, oh, there they are. They finally showed up.
Well, they were struggling for months to beat us with anything but Supers and Titans. They were losing pretty much all the subcap engagements, and we even won some capital engagements by dropping carriers and getting air superiority, even when they had capitals on the field. They hit Oizhinen, our staging system, 3 times. They lost 3-1 ISK every time they did it. We fought over some Fortizars in BWF sometimes, and actually used carriers in BWF under their Sinojammer. And on multiple occasions and won fights that way. We were hitting the enemy fort, the Pandemic Horde Fortizars in Oizhinin, while they would put carriers and dreads on their own Fortizar, and we would put our carriers 350 away, and they would have Supers of Titans form and wouldn't drop. And we were winning fights like that as well. And then about midway through January, the switch flipped. About when Killabee got back, I noticed a change in things. It was a fight that we won in BWF, but we almost lost because Killabee tried to boast in my Afterburner Eagle fleet. And Afterburner Eagles don't move that fast, so if you're in bubbles and if they drop Titans on you, it can be very dangerous. But just the fact that they were all of a sudden willing to just put 3 random Titans on the field with no fact support and just basically dare us to counter drop them, which we didn't do, showed a pretty quick shift in tactics.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, if Killa is back, that means that there is an adult in the.
Well, you have to wonder. Now, Killa came on this show just a month ago or less and said, look, New Year's Eve special, and said, look, I'm tired of working for a coalition. I want to do just NC things. So I'm wondering, with Vince being back, if he didn't just get over to Killa and say, look, man, this shit's got to be done. Like, get your ass back over here, get to work. You know? Because he was very adamant about not giving a fuck about Goblins and Horde and how much he just wanted to be out of that situation. And he said it here on this show. And now all of a sudden he's running all their Titans and Supers and dropping them right in the middle of.
Well, it's possible that
shit,
NC has woken up and realized that Horde is actually vulnerable, right? And that something is that if they don't actually work to defend their meat shield, they can't rely on Pandemic Legion to defend Pandemic Horde, which is something that ultimately Pandemic Horde was always Pandemic Legion's responsibility. But as Pandemic Legion has faded as an organization, a lot of these responsibilities are sort of being left by default almost to NC and if NC wasn't there fighting for Pandemic Horde, just SIGs and squads and Legacy working with the Imperium, like the main deployment, Death Clone deployment, that Legacy has done, would probably see Horde wiped out pretty speedily if they didn't have backup from NCL.
It's gotten really bad. I mean, last night I did a fleet where I just randomly roamed on stream up into Kavala, and PL came over, and they had 20 guys, and it was Muck Bavarian leading. And they'd been forming up for a while, and that was it, 20 dudes. It's like, you can't really defend an entity like Horde with 20 mans. It's just one SIG with, say, a Liberty Squad, for example, could easily deal with that, So it's how far the might have fallen, I guess. But the question I have, though, is, you have a region like Kavala, who what could be potentially a big money maker in renting. And people willing to rent out the drones. We've known that's been going on for years and years and years. Why not care about it? Why throw your group that failed in Branch to defend Kavala with 50 guys when they could easily just defend it with the primary Horde people? I'm drawing blanks, so that's why I'm asking.
I got nothing.
I don't understand. It's like Horde could be doing so much more. But it's almost like they're looking to find these big, huge brawls, and that's it. Everything else is irrelevant to them.
Well, they have a different mindset, but, I mean, their space isn't super under risk. I mean, they made it seem like it was, but it's not like we had much of a shot without a super fleet up there. I mean, we had a Dread Cache, and we had some Armor Supers, much less than we anticipated having. And so, we went up there to figure out, is it possible to win large soft timers and large structure timers without Titans? Because we all know, if you've got more Titans in the enemy, you got a pretty good shot at winning. So we're we know that. We don't need to know that, learn any more about that. What can we do if we have less Titans? And once they started stepping up their super cap engagement, their super cap, whatchamacallit, willingness to use them. We very quickly realized what it would take, and that we hadn't built enough dreads, and we hadn't invested enough money, and we didn't have enough armor supers. So we very quickly realized this probably wasn't going to happen. So we looked for an opportunity where we could reduce the numbers, and AUTZ was obviously the best place for it. We just botched the attempt, and unfortunately.
Yeah, should happen.
Shit happens.
That's one of the things. In this day and age, it is fascinating how losing 270 dreadnoughts has become kind of a rounding error in modern use. But that's insurance and where we stand today.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an interesting developing thing, and I guess since we have Test here, we can ask, is Skill U versus French Connection, and there's also been hints of them going after Immensea and Test Holdings eventually. Well, what is going on with that? Do you guys have anything about that? Or is it just like they're in Curse, who cares?
That's going to have to be Billy. We're about to fight Horde. Sorry. I got to mute.
Oh, Billy?
What was the question, sorry?
Skill U. They're currently in Curse, fucking French Connection, and they're also saying they're going to go after Immensea, and they're fucking with Immensea. And then there's been comments from people saying they're going after Test. What is the deal with that? Like, do you have anything about that, or is it just meh?
I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not too worried
Nice.
about Skill U going into Immensea. I mean, they're attacking some of the Immensea alliances, but if they go any deeper, they're, walking into the grinder. I don't know, something that's not fun.
Right, it's not like they're going to shoot structures or anything, and it's not going to be much.
Oh, I mean, maybe they shoot structures, but that's their choice if they choose to do so.
Interesting.
Well, bringing it back to Elo Knight here for a moment, I had also forgotten to mention that Elo Knight is apparently running for CSM this.
Yeah, his campaign platform is interesting. I was reading about that. He wants to help CCP defeat botting. He's been making a daily post about killing the bots that are Delve. I don't understand. Of all the botting places to look at, I mean, there's botting probably in Delve, but like, there's everybody in his threads literally reply with, "Have you looked at the drones? Have you looked at the space you're living in?" So on and so forth. So that's one of his campaign slogans. And another one is help CCP defeats something else with their servers, like get rid of lag, and I don't know. I guess that's a thing. The best comment in the thread, Mittens, I think you might like this, is who does he have to replace him after he quits after a month?
Wow. Well, to be fair to Elo, that if he does get elected and then he does quit after a month, that will be far more serious than Vince Draken took election to the CSM.
Yeah, I think Vince just wanted to thank leaks. I mean, look, guys, I know we weren't on last week. Last week I had a whole bunch of cool stuff to talk about, and then I looked at it and said, okay, in the last 2 weeks, there really hasn't been shit other than Test. Test is like the big news, because the thing with Horde is Horde has Gem in it, and they've kind of, I don't know, I guess the best way to put this is, been satisfied with the idea of VNIs are the best ratting tool and procures are the best way to make money. I mean, it seems like the elite of Horde have some plans, but like the basic line member is just kind of stuck in Geminate, and how the fuck that still goes on is beyond me. It's hard to comprehend.
I think we're in a calm before the storm scenario here. I think that in the next quarter or so, you're going to see a really interesting period of time in EVE. People are clearly back for the holidays, and the sort of the skill level in the game is going up. You can see that in the Geminate campaign. If Killa B is re-engaging, and ProGod has reported that they are encountering much more resistance that's being run in a more intelligent way. People are going to be, the thing is, like, February and March, like, people, especially if you're stuck in a wintry zone like I am right now, you get itchy, you play more computer games, there's not too much that you can do if it's ice outside. So I'd anticipate not necessarily formal deployments and things like that, but definitely an intensification. And right now, Horde and NC. have the #1 targets on them, I think, out of any organization in EVE currently.
I theorized about this, and maybe I'm just theorizing, but actually I'm going to bring a stream up here in a second. Looks like the fight may go down in HiSec with Test. Is that I'm back February 20th, but it just seems like NC.'s coming to the realization that if they don't do something about the Horde situation and prop Horde up and make it so that Horde survives, they're next, right? Because they've already been proven that UALX, with the UALX fights and with the fights in the north, their Titans and Supers aren't enough anymore, right? Like, PL and them are not big enough. And with them resetting GOTG and choosing the Horde side and leaving GOTG for dead, it'd be really hard-pressed to see Sword Dragon want to go up and save them, right? So if Horde fails, who's left? That's NC. Right? PL's not big enough to do anything about it. And if enough people cared, NC would die. So they've got to do something about this P-Horde problem. And I say problem because nobody wants to or cares about goblins, but they've got to keep it propped up or otherwise... Next. Someone other than DBRB to run the show. He has no understanding of the meta. Okay.
Well, I would like
guess.
to get some early predictions here while we're running around. Pro God Legend, of course, is a fleet run. Villy, what do you see happening if you're willing to spitball a bit? What are you seeing in terms of the macro level changes to the game, if you see any, in the coming?
The macro level, not much. Like, there's so little room for macro change at the moment. You have, Jesus, there's 1,000 people. You just don't have like any real openings. Like, I mean, obviously you have Try and Pureblind that can, find a hole and maybe they'll regrow there. But like, the game as it is right now is very clearly defined, I guess.
It's interesting that there are changes that are taking place, but people aren't really paying too much attention to them. Red Alliance is going somewhere at the end of March. We got some questions on the Fireside. People saw a Sov transfer some period basis. They sold the region to the Imperium, but it's still being inhabited by RMC until the end of the month, and nobody really knows where they're going. We have asked an INN reporter to do. Even the top tier of the Gunstorm Directorate doesn't know where RMC is going to go because things are up in the air. They have a month, I think, before they figure out what they're going to do. So that is a macro level shift, like when you see a region change hands. But there hasn't been, other than like a lot of random speculation on Reddit, there hasn't been too much eyeballs on.
An interesting point about that region is it was one of the 5 quietest regions in the game last year. It wasn't like it was a region that, if that change really happens and nobody meaningful moves in, then it just goes back to being even more quiet than it already was, right?
Have there been any shifts in the fleet meta that we've been seeing? Because I think that things have been kind of... Villy, from what you've been seeing out there, has there been any sort of...
not really. Megas are still kind of the king. Like, it's... everything's pretty stale at the moment. Or I shouldn't say stale. It's like slowly adapting, slowly changing. Eagles are overtaking Munins a little bit, which is pleasant, I guess.
I think the Munin phase never... Well, people were definitely using the Munins, but I never really saw them be used terribly effectively. It was more like a joke whenever people would bring them around.
I mean, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but it has a lot to do with cost. You're not seeing massive T3 fleets. You're not seeing massive Nightmare fleets, right? You're not seeing these gigantic, expensive potential whelps in the subcap variety. And is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well,
I'm gonna throw another softball. I'm just gonna keep throwing softballs to Villy here. What exactly is it that? What do you want to talk about, Villy? Let me just give you the ball. If you're not interested in like macro level speculation, what's interesting in Villy Land?
Well, in case you haven't heard, I've been beaten to the punch by Elon Knight, but I too plan to initiate my CSM candidacy next week.
Oh, please! That's big news. Tell us.
That is news.
Breaking news!
Just like the 2020 season, you have people announcing that they're running for president, and we have a live announcement that Villy is running for the CSM. That's fantastic. Tell us more, Villy.
Well, after Test's recent failure at the 2018 CSM summit elections, I felt I needed to step in and take decisive action to ensure that Test Alliance and Legacy are properly represented at the most important forum of EVE Online democracy. There is no situation where a coalition of our size should be voiceless in such a important forum, and certainly many issues are on my agenda. Obviously everyone wishes for the crushing of bots, and I too hate bots, but I also care about other things like war deck mechanics and newbies and making money and things like that. And I don't want any of those things to be let down.
Have you already done a?
No, I haven't done any.
A little bit of preemptive opposition research, like, in terms of oppo, you got to like
Opposition research, yeah,
that you've said
no.
for yourself. You got to do your own oppo to make sure that there's paste bins or something happened with Test's last candidate because PL was PL was butt blasted because of
yeah. So a member of Pandemic Legion, basically they like what you call it when you scrape paste bin, they scrape paste bin for everything creature had ever said, and they found he made a poor choice in words when he was very angry at someone, and obviously they then put that on the EVE Online forums, and then CCP decided that because they had forgotten to do their research, that they should then tell Creature he wasn't allowed to be a CSM candidate, and didn't give us an opportunity to have someone else do it, basically.
Oh, this is great. If you're watching the live stream right now, Billy, we have the fight going down. I'm going to do some adjustments
right off the Keepstar, yeah. I'm trying to MW approach it.
Apparently, Concord has started shooting NC Dot. They may have fucked that up pretty badly. For those that don't know, once Concord gets started in high sec,
there's no Concord here.
No, there's 3 Concord police commanders on my screen right now. They're nuding out an NC Dot guy. Yeah, it must have been like one guy, but the point is like if you try to repair a guy who has Concord on his ass, you're pretty fucked, right? Like it'll just create a snowball effect. So
shit! I forgot Cool Kids Only mode. My bad, guy.
Yeah.
Cool Kids Only mode. Normally, the last 15 minutes of every meta show, we shift it to subscribers only, and we do questions and answers. And we'll go a little bit longer if there are questions that people ask. You never really know. Just to make sure that we don't screw over our subscribers and people supporting the channel.
Alrighty.
Yeah, let me hit this here.
Yeah, do you guys remember when they told us that putting Keepstar down was retarded? Because I do. Who would ever shoot a Keepstar in high sec?
I think it's fascinating now that you are seeing a lot of economic warfare that is now sort of the precursor to a campaign in EVE. So one of the interesting points that ProGod, I think it was ProGod, said before you came on, Billy, or actually it might have been Billy thing. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. One of you said that you could suggest that the campaign for Legacy against Horde actually began in October with the hits on the perimeter Keepstar. And I think that's a fair statement, right? Like you are really seeing.
We currently estimate that this thing was making them $1 trillion ISK a month, which for Horde would represent 70% of their income.
I think that's a fair statement. Our analysis of it, I can't verify that figure, but the
we make roughly
400
to 400 bill a month is currently what we're making in the Keepstar with a 0.3% tax rate, and with we guess we have between 30 and 40% control of the market because there's still a lot of Asbel messery, I guess you could say, and we're really not putting into the mass level of effort that you would put into if you wanted to stop it, right? So our prediction is we've got 30-40% control, and we're making 300 to 400 billion with a 0.3% tax. So if you extrapolate that, at a 0.5% tax, which is what they had, it gets pretty crazy how much they could have been making here, and
it was definitely a huge chunk, if not. Definitely the majority, probably 70% plus of their income. Aerith is going to pop in here and chat and give his view on the income that Horde had. One of the things that we have a question from a subscriber here is, can somebody explain this high sec thing? Who is fighting who and why?
Yeah, I'll
somebody tell us what the fuck is happening here on this screen.
Yeah, so we have a Keepstar belonging to Test Tranquility Trading Tower. This is what Test put down, Keepstar and Perimeter, the first one ever, to basically make like a trade hub. And trade hubs, as Billy just pointed out, make a lot of money because people can set their own prices. They also can set taxes that are cheaper than that of, say, JITA. And so people will willingly put their stuff here. And currently the fight is Test Dominix's versus a NC Dot Ferox fleet and a Horde Ferox fleet. And it looks like the Dommies are holding pretty well. For those that don't know, these are armor tank Dommies. They have drones. Drones do really well. And the Keepstars are pretty much neutered in high sec. You just stick a shitload of plates on them because they can't use any of their AoE. They can't Doomsday. They can't bomb. So that they pretty much suck against subcaps in high sec. So right now you're watching a bunch of Feroxes get vaporized right now by Dommies. And the Dommies are actually holding up pretty well. I'm looking at this Dommie that got primaried. He didn't die. I don't see any wrecks on Test side right now, but I'm seeing a shitload of NC Dot Feroxes getting zapped. Plus
Okay,
a cool
so
Concord. Yeah, there we go.
as a follow-up here, I've just been conferring with Aerith in another window, and essentially the way that we are able, that both the Gunstorm finance team and Legacy Coalition's finance people were able to figure out what Horde was making and then have a disagreement over the statistics, is that CCP releases the total player taxation in the markets in the MER every month. So you can essentially tell, based upon that data, you can kind of reverse engineer it and get a prediction of what they were making. So from a strategic perspective, what's fascinating, if Test is making a couple $100 billion a month, that's probably what Horde was making, but we do know that their income level overall was very low. So if before they were only making a couple $100 billion a month, and then that's been taken away, and that was like 50 to 70% of their income stream. That means that without Perimeter, these guys are basically broke. And we know, we've talked about it on the show, Boat has crowed about it before, and in a well-deserved way, that when Pandemic Horde, after losing Perimeter, had their like special renter thing that they were doing for their Blessed Beans or whatever their Horde Vanguard Secret Scroll Club was. To try to recover some form of income. They rented space. They did not have a renter program. Pandemic Horde rented space after losing Perimeter in order to find a place for their more highly skilled pilots to actually make some money because of the efforts that Test did. So from a macro level trend, I'm going to go ahead and answer my own question earlier in terms of macro level trends that I could see going forward into 2019. Is economic warfare as a precursor to strategic warfare becoming just a standard part of EVE Doctrine? This was not always the case. You would have SOV warfare or harassment tactics or things like that. But between the Perimeter Keepstar and some of the SIGs and squads kind of stuff that you're seeing both the Imperium Legacy and a lot of people across the game doing, I think you're going to see economic targets to soften up alliances before you start seeing strategic deployments. And I think the Geminate campaign is a good example of this.
We've learned, or say I've learned, that from the numbers that you can effectively wipe out rental regions just by sitting there, because no renter is going to rent a system or function a system where there's people in local that are going to harass them. They just will go to somewhere else. There's 10 regions in the game they can rent, right? They're not going to just stay there and be harassed. But we're looking at a situation now where it makes you wonder, where did all that income, they had almost a year's worth of $300-400 bill a month coming in, where did it go? Like they're running
Horde is huge, right? So I'm going to jump in here. One of the things is you usually see mismanagement in alliances that don't have dedicated finance teams. Even in those that do, you can still see mismanagement. An alliance as big, so like if you take the 1 trillion ISK a month figure and you ratchet it down to something, in the 300-400 billion ISK a month sort of territory, for an alliance as large as Pandemic Horde, that is running on fume. Right, like that is for the number of players that they have, 300-400 billion ISK a month. Even if it was being well managed, that's not enough to run an alliance with more than 10,000 members in it. Right, like that's ridiculous. So even if they were well managed, because they were completely reliant, essentially, on a single point of income, that being the Perimeter thing. And also remember, another thing to keep in mind here is that Perimeter income, they had to deal with I Choose You holdings on that. So Horde was probably not getting 100% of everything from that.
That's a good point.
Between a little bit of mismanagement, between people just not being efficient or optimized, which you definitely saw with Horde before, where the money went into the fucking ether. So yeah, let's see what we got here. Let me see if we've got any. Durkadin, thank you for the subscriber. We've got a couple of subscribers today. I've been a little bit shoddy in terms of doing actual vocal shout-outs. I've been trying to make a point of thanking people for subscribing or throwing money at the screen in chat. So hopefully I haven't missed anybody.
Right. So here's another thing that it makes you wonder is, if you look at GOTG, you say the economic warfare hitting a new high. Thank you, Syntax. Look at what happened with GOTG. I mean, outside of the Titans and Super Shine Out, the economic warfare that was on them from just a few SIGs and squads and AFK campers put them in such a place that they're like, look, we'll just give you 40 faction Fortizars. Please leave. And leave us alone for 6 months. We need to make money, right? Like, how bad was it going for them? They didn't have a high-sec 500 bill a month generator to where they had to go, look, please, just fucking leave us alone for 6 months. Let us make money. Let us rat and mine in peace. What is going on that you need to do that? And that's where I guess the question is with Horde now, right? Or even in the future, if you look at the drones, imagine AFK camping the drone lands and wiping out one region at a time and just shutting down the economics of the drones. Rental money is literally all certain people have for their income. They don't make money themselves. They're not I don't see Skill You out Oracle mining or Super.
That's another macro level trend. So again, shoutouts for SynTKX and Baracus 979 or 797. Thanks for subscribing. That is another trend that we're seeing, is that certain alliances, certain coalitions are actually getting into the economic metagame. The big one to watch, of course, is Legacy Coalition, because the Imperium has been doing this for more than a year now. But Legacy in 2018 was really the only block level entity that adapted beyond the renter model, and actually putting down platforms, investing in their infrastructure, and playing the game the way that the developers meant it to be played, i.e. that the economy should fuel war. And you're seeing, I will go ahead and, it's January. We did a lot of what happened in 2018, a very long decade, 2018, and doing a little predictions for 2019. I will say that I think you'll see more entities, certainly Legacy, maybe some others, really doubling down on building up economic.
Well, our last meta show had Aerith on here, and I want to thank real quick. Zalman just gave away 5 free subs to everybody.
Holy crap! Wow, thank you, Zalman. That's
and then we
awesome.
had another 7 months. It's a great show, guys. This is important because people asking, okay, well, where's the meta going now? Aerith said, unless people start working on their economic game, they're never going to catch up to where they need to be to sustain long wars. That's always been the question in the game, is when the soft grind hits, the structure grind hits, who's got the bank to supply that war? Because
that's an interesting question. We've got a question here from Silverius for our guest from Test. I think Pro God Legend might still be busy with a fleet, but did and here I am asking Villy an economy question, which is kind of like when people ask me moon rental questions, but even so, I think this is a great question. So, Villy, did adopting the strategy of really engaging with the economic and the infrastructural aspects of the game for Legacy Coalition bring a lot of change to your organization, or was it something that your logistics team mostly handled? Can you tell us something about that shift from putting down roots and really diving into the econ and infra meta?
I think it's just a mindset thing. You have to kind of say, okay, this has to be a key component of what we do, or else we are going to fall behind. And if we don't do this, we're not going to have the resources we want to achieve our objectives. And I think it was pretty crucial for us to kind of have that mindset change where we said, okay, this is what we need to do. And to me, it didn't really change a ton of things within the organization, but it definitely I don't know, it changes you a little. You have to move away from the mindset that PvP is the only component of EVE that needs to be manufactured and controlled, I guess you could say.
That sounds fair. Let's get an update here from DBRB. He has some news for us about the fight that's taking place on the screen.
Right now, it's 315 Feroxes versus 190 or so Dommies. Test is warping or repositioning right now. But I will point this out. We're seeing a bunch of smart bombing battleships trying to clear drones. That's very dangerous in high sec, because all it takes is one neutral to get hit by that smart bomb, and there goes your smart bombing battleship.
Yeah, every smart bomber's been concorded.
Right, so that's why you're seeing Concord appear. But right now, it's just, when you have that many Feroxes, you alpha battleships, there's no real reps that go into that. So we're going to see where Test ends up with the reposition here. Was at one point looking like a steady stream of 10 or so Feroxes were just vaporizing every once in a while. So it's very possible that them being
Shield
so
reps
close...
are just too strong under TIDA, I think, is the issue we're...
Okay. Yeah, so that war, we'll see what happens. The Keepstar's repairing. I mean, the thing is not being shot at the moment.
Oh, the Keepstar's not really at risk here. This is just a fight for a fight, I think.
Yeah, it repaired once already, so... And it's only the shield timer. It's not like the thing's gonna die unless they can bring.
It's not
Titans
even a
into high
timer,
sec.
right? It's just
Yeah.
initial reinforce if they actually continue to go through with it.
All right. Well, I think that's
real
a good
quick.
time to stop.
Well, yeah, we're about to leave, but I want to ask, since we have Billy here, because I've been wanting to ask this for a couple weeks. I've been seeing this. Why Dominix's and Nestor's?
That's a pro God fleet comp.
Okay, that's a
I
great
mean,
answer.
Dommies are good. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, I love Dommies. That's why I was asking.
In like small and medium gauge, medium-sized engagements, they're less than spectacular at this level. But
Because I'm looking at this, and I said this in a different channel, but we're about to call it a day here. Is that imagine if somebody just showed up with 10 smart bombing battleships? All those Feroxes just die. They're all balled up. They're not moving. They're just sitting there. And it's not like the Feroxes can shoot the battleships before they smart bomb because they're not war deck, so they would just lose all their dudes to Concord. And then boom, smart bombs, and it would just be a wonderful mess. So I'm surprised nobody's tried that yet with that much stuff. But hey, we're out of time. We gotta go.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate both Villy and ProGod joining us. Thank you for all of us, everyone who has subscribed, everyone who watched today. Twirls03, thanks for the last-minute sub. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Again,
For next week,
we missed last. I'm glad to be back on a regular weekly schedule, so we'll be back next week.
Next week, I should have a special guest. I'm working on it. I started working on it this week, so I'll keep you updated, and you may see a tweet from me or something about it, or a hype ping or something. I'll let you know. So,
all right, thank you very
bye,
much, guys, and we will see you next week. Thank you to our guests for turning up too.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.